to Tuesday Topics. We're so glad you could be with us and join us tonight. If you have an extra minute there, go ahead and share that link with your friends and your family members. Open up a live stream or what is that called? I've lost my whole train of word. A watch party. That's what it's called. So start watch party, enjoy. Don't let your friends and family miss out on these opportunities to grow. So last week we spoke with Sean Paris about making family memories and what so many practical, wonderful ideas for building our family and the memories we make with our children. Tonight we move on to a new topic. So Paulo, what's our new topic tonight?
Yeah, so we are excited again that once again we are here together and welcome and for joining us. So today we have Pastor Eli. He is our ministerial director for Chesapeake Conference, and he also our family director. So, and his topic today is going to be about intentional family. We all of us, all these topics that we're bringing here, we all need to improve and to get these tips and how can we live a better life on this earth. Pastor Eli, introduce yourself for us about your family, how many kids you have, and your wife. Introduce yourself to us a little bit.
Well, thank you so much, and I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for the invitation. I thought for a second you were going to say, and how many wives you have, but I'm just going to clarify. I'm the husband of one wife. We have two kids, and our son is a pastor. And just last week, we had the great joy of having the ordination of our son into pastoral ministry, which it was a great event. We were truly blessed by that, and so we're still celebrating that. And that's our son. Our daughter is a teacher, and now she is specializing and working with special needs children, and especially focusing with autistic children. And she has a huge heart for them and loves what she's doing. Her husband is an engineer, so it's good. It's a tremendous blessing. My wife and I met when I was her pastor, and so we've been married for over 31 years, and very, very happily married, and continue to grow in our relationship. And so that's the gist of what I am and my family.
Oh, that's nice. Nice, Pastor Eli, to know a little bit about you, about your family. And I know, once again, congratulations for your son's ordination. I know it's a big step in his career as a pastor. And we join the praise that God can bless him. And that's a nice job that your daughter has as well. That's a special calling right there. That's not for everyone. So praise God for her ministry too. Pastor Eli, you are going to talk about families today. This is a much needed topic. Churches are made of families. And take us there. The time is yours. And once again, thank you for joining us tonight.
All right, thank you so much. All right, I'm going to go ahead and load up my presentation so you all can see it. Good. So I want to say probably a few years back, a couple of years ago, I wanted to start a new series. The idea was, what should I be talking about? Families. And the Lord inspired me to talk about intentionality when it comes to family. Intentionality is an interesting subject. How often are you intentional about something? Well, in life, there are many things for which we are intentional. And as I was thinking about this, I realized that perhaps one of the areas or a couple of the areas where we are not always intentional is family, is marriage, and sometimes our relationship with God too. Being intentional means that you're not just gonna sit down and wait what happens. It's not an inactive way. It's not a way of just waiting and trying to see how things are gonna work out. Intentionality means that you are going to have goals and a vision and a plan. And so that's very important. And so God inspired me, led me through studies and preparation to develop a series that I have on intentional. And so I have different aspects of it: intentional family, intentional marriage, intentional home. And so today I'm focusing on intentional family. And because of this being such a broad subject, today I'm just gonna dip a little bit into the beginning of this part because there's many things that we can share when it comes to being intentional about the family that we have. For many families, life just happens. Now you think about it, and sometimes when I'm talking about this, I know that there might be one or two families that have been very intentional about what they've done, how they developed their life together as a family, how they have grown as a family. But as I have observed, as I have advised or counseled many marriages and many families through my years of ministry, I've come to the conclusion that very often we just see life as happening before us when it comes to marriage and family. Tonight, we're just going to touch briefly on the subject of intentionality when it comes to family, and trying to understand what it means and how it works. So I'd like to just ask you something. If you were to put intentionality in your own words, what would you say? How would you describe it in your own words? Perhaps you can put it in the chat, or you can put it as a comment on Facebook right there where you are, trying to reflect on what it means for you to be intentional about something. And I don't have a way to see it, so I don't know if you're doing it or not, but my intention here is to make you think about the way that you're living your life, the way that you are living your marriage, your home, your family, the way things are happening. Are they happening just because they're simply falling into place, or is there an intention, a plan? Is there a deliberate idea of what you want, a vision, a purpose for your marriage? And that's what I have in mind. That's what I share with you. As you look it up, and I looked it up in the dictionary online, and it says that, yeah, intentional is about doing things with purpose, when it's calculated, when it's willful, premeditated. So that intentionality is very important when it comes to family. And so that's the idea. There's a book by Carol Kendall, and the name of the book is Five-Star Families. And she makes 5 points that she feels are very important when it comes to thinking and planning and organizing and working with your family. She talks about love. Love needs to be intentional. Love needs to be a part of the equation. And what happens very often is that families do not include love and relationships into their relationships. And so things, as I already mentioned, just happen. So you have to be intentional about the love that you're experiencing. This is a good one. Fun. I do marriage counseling. I see many couples, and this is something that is find very interesting. When couples start to have trouble and they start have difficulties in their relationships, whether it is within them, within the marriage, or with the children or the family that is around them, or the people that are around them in connection with their family, one of the things that goes out from the very beginning is fun, having fun in your relationships. Are you being intentional about that? Loyalty connects us and keep us together for as long as we are alive, as long as we are connected. So it's a great thing to have loyalty. Growth is very important in the families to have that. It keeps us healthy, keeps us moving with the times, and again, having that intentionality. And then faith lights our way home. It makes a difference in the way we relate to one another, because faith grounds us, and so that's is very important. So I thought those were five very important points that we need to consider when we're talking about being intentional in the family. However, that's the book, and she goes on to say this. She says, our children need us to dream and have goals. I love that. Our children, notice that, our children. Well, let's start with our children. So our spouse, our husband, our wife, they need us to have this. And so together as a couple, you You sit down and say, okay, so what are our dreams? What do we want to accomplish? When they're young, now back to the children, they're totally dependent upon us for guidance. They don't know how fallible we are. In their eyes, we rule. They need us to care about our purpose as a family. They need us to have a vision or where we're headed as and a plan for how we're going to get there. They need us to lead them. That's a powerful statement that I found in that book. So the challenges that we have when it comes to our relationships is that unfortunately, because we don't come to relationships with intentionality, with a plan, then very often what happens is we follow patterns that we have learned in our own homes. So if you were blessed with a good family, there is a possibility that some of the things you did in your family as you were growing up and as you became a teenager and then eventually left your house is that you're going to bring these things to your new relationship. And that's great when it happens. Again, you have to be intentional about that. But the other thing that can happen is the opposite, is that you grew up in a troubled family. And so if you grew up in a troubled family, then you're going to bring those dysfunctions into your relationship. Again, because of this, then you need to be intentional. If you have a good family, a few family background in the sense that where you grew up, we call that family of origin. If you're family of origin, you had good relationships and you feel nurtured and cared for, those things, bring them intentionally into your relationships that you have now. And if you grew up with troubles and difficulties, then think about those things and then bring them into the relationship that you have. I'm sorry, don't bring them. What I mean is don't bring those things intentionally. Do things that are opposite so you can change what your relationship is going to be like. For instance, I grew up with a father who was an alcoholic. And as I was growing up, I saw my father many times and his family, because he was something that was what we call sometimes a generational evil that was transferred from one generation to the other. So my family on my father's side had that problem. As growing up, as I saw that so many times in my father, as I was growing up, I always thought, boy, when I have my family, I don't want to have that in my family. And that shaped my life, because when it came time for me to be tempted with following this same step that he had followed, I was able to say no because I have seen it and I knew what it caused and the problems that it brought, and I didn't want to follow those same steps. So can these patterns that are negative be broken? And the answer is yes. Number one, God is willing to work in our lives to help us deal with issues that are beyond us and give us the strength that we need. He is the one that brings change into our lives. And so because of that, it's very important that we have a close connection and a close relationship with Jesus Christ. So when we see those patterns, we seek him for help. And when you know that these problems are bigger than yourself, and sometimes you're going to need additional help, I always encourage people, seek help, find professional help, talk to good friends that will lead you into a better decisions and give you strength and help you to work things out so you can have a better thing. So it is possible. Your journey to the family of your dreams never starts tomorrow. It starts today as you start to discover the things in your family that you know you need to change, because you're going to start thinking about how is it that your family is working and what things you can be doing to have a better family, better relationships. When it comes to intentionality in relationships, we have to think about many things that factor into the relationships. For instance, one thing that we need to factor in is the love language that we have, that natural way that you have to tell your loved one that you care for her, for him, for your children, and then understand it when they're trying to tell you that they love you. Because as you know, it's not just a matter of saying, I love you. It has to be accompanied, or it has to be done either through words, through gifts, through different ways, languages that share your love with others. If you know what I'm talking about, I would encourage you to think about the love languages that your family have, and then be intentional about sharing your love with each other in a way that the others will understand. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I would encourage you to find the book, the Five Love Languages by Gary Chapman, and read it. It's a tremendous book that helps us understand how do we relate to each other and how we learn to express our love to one another. Then comes the temperaments. You know, those that little way that is inside of us that makes us who we are and how we function, how we work together. And so understanding more about how I work, how we work together as families is very important. Understanding the good things and the dysfunctional things that we grew up with, and then knowing those things, then bringing them to our families. If they're negative, then not having them. If they're positive, then implementing them in our families. Learning about gender differences, about personalities, understanding there's social pressures that will try to force us to be one way or the other. Understanding work demands, and of course the baggages that we bring into our relationships. All those things are important to understand. And so when we understand these things and we think about how they're impacting our families, then we can be intentional about how we want to change those things in our families. In the book, The Family You Always Wanted by Gary Chapman, he talks about family, what is a healthy family. He says this, which is really interesting, and it makes you ponder, think about this. It says, in recent years, I have had a growing awareness that many in our day have no clear picture of a healthy family. They know the pain and problems of this functional family, but they do not know what a healthy family will look like. Yes, sometimes that is the challenge that we have. How do we know what a healthy family is like? How do we know how a healthy family communicates and relates? Well, hopefully we'll dip a little bit into that this evening, but I want to encourage you to continue to search and be, again, intentional about the family that you want to have. Consider the things that are going on in your relationships with your spouse, with your children, with extended family, and think about how it is impacting your family, and then make decisions that will help you have better relationships. The high, noble, lofty design of God in the institution of marriage is not discerned. We don't get it sometimes. Therefore, the purest affection of the heart, the noblest traits of character, are not developed. Why they're not developed? Because we are not thinking about how we're going to have those things in our relationships. So, what happens? As I mentioned earlier, what happens is usually that what we learn at home is that what we practice when we grow up and how we relate to one another. So if you catch yourself bringing these things into your relationships, then be intentional about having the opposite things in your relationship. Time lovingly invested shapes the destiny of your family. Yes, my friends, one thing that is very important in relationships is the time that we devote in our relationships and how we invest time with one another. So I thought, well, what kind of biblical examples do we find in the Bible that talks to us about relationships and that helps us understand the either dysfunctional families and then how to change those behaviors? And there's several in the Bible. See, the Bible is a book that tells us about the good things that happen and the difficult things that happen, the challenging things that happen. And we find in David a tremendous example of things that we should not be doing when it comes to families and relationships. And there is an incident in the Bible that is there for us to learn from and then apply principles, learn principles from it, ideas of things that we should not be doing when it comes to our relationships. But one of the situations is found actually in 2 Samuel chapter 13, and is the relationship between two of his children. Now we're talking about biblical days in the sense of things work a little different back there. But yet what happened really is things that could have been avoided because of multiple marriages that David had engaged with, and them having children from all these different relationships. He had created a very dysfunctional home life for many of his children. And so the result is pain and trouble. So these situations had actually caused this for him. All right. So now we need to understand that God is clear in the things that He has left for us to understand in the Bible. Um, Let me back up here just a second, okay? Because just realized there's something here that I skipped. All right. Sorry about that. Okay, forgive me for that interruption, but it's something that went wrong in my presentation. Okay, so we're back. All right, so what was happening here? There were sinful tendencies that David the king had allowed to happen in his family. After this, and this is Samuel 13, verse 1, after this, Absalom, the son of David, had a lovely sister whose name was Tamar. And Amnon, the son of David, loved her. So we're talking here about a brother that falls in love with his sister, his half sister, by the way. And of course, improper, not something that should have been allowed, but yet because of the poor communication that David had with his children, Amnon goes and asks counsel from one of his cousins and gets the wrong idea about what needs to happen. He says to her, go and lie in bed, pretend to be sick, and then have your father send her to help you with food and things. So he goes through this scheme of deceiving his sister. And the Bible tells us what happens afterwards. It's really something that should have never happened. Why? Because the king had allowed this to happen because of the poor relationships that he had. So does God have clear instructions for us in the Bible? Yes. And these children knew about this. Amnon knew about these things, and yet he proceeded. We need to always be able to teach our children what is right and what is wrong, and help them develop good, healthy practices that they can apply to their lives. Again, this happens as we're intentional about what we're teaching our children. I like this picture because sometimes our kids are learning from their friends the things that they need to be doing, and we neglect teaching them the things that we need to be teaching them. And so we need to have a plan on how we're going to raise our children and teach them. Because of the poor communication, we find that after the act takes place, that what David does is actually he creates all these negative emotions in his family. The king, when he heard about all the things, he was very angry. And Absalom spoke to his brother Amnon, neither good nor bad, for Absalom hated Haman because he had forced his sister Tamar. David is angry and he does not do anything. And so the story develops into all these other things that happen. There is a website called One Love, and I have the information right here that you can see. Write a note, and then later on you can check it out. It helps us understand tremendously about good relationships and poor relationships in our families. And so I wanted to go to that information so you can see it, because it helps us, again, be intentional about the families that we have and the relationships that we have. I'm going to share something different now. And let's see, I got it right here. In this website, One Love, it makes a list of 10 signs of an unhealthy relationship and 10 signs of a healthy relationship. I would encourage you to check it out. This information is very good, and it has videos and more information on how to develop healthy relationships. But let's start with the negative relationships, the unhealthy ones. It says that when there's negative or unhealthy relationships, there is intensity. There is this idea that the relationship have to move very fast, and there's one person driving this in the wrong direction. There is possessiveness, the idea that you belong to me, and because you belong to me, then you isolate this person. You pull him from the rest of the people So then you can manipulate and control their actions. You sabotage other relationships that they have, so you can have that person to yourself. You start making this person feeling guilty about their things they do. The relationship is volatile in the sense that anything, just a big fight, and then there's belittling and deflecting responsibility when things go wrong, always blaming the partner. And when you start to see these things in your relationship, then you need to realize that this is a relation that is not healthy. And so you need to stop that. If you are receiving this from someone, these are 10 signs of the fact that you need to change that relationship. Is telling you that these are red flags and you need to change that relationship. But at the same time, it gives us 10 signs of a healthy relationship. I want to focus on this because, again, if you're going to be intentional about the relationships in your family, these are things you want to have. So what are they? You want to have a comfortable pace in your relationship. In a healthy relationship, you're not pushing each other to move faster than the other person can move, but you actually are patient and you wait on the other person for the love to grow. If you're in a relationship that is developing, and if you have been married, then you are patient with your partner as he or she grows in his or her relationship towards you. There's this element of trust. It grows because you learn that this person can be trusted. There are no secrets. You share things knowing that the other person is going to accept what you're saying, or the things that you're doing. That because there's honesty, there's also, because there's trust, there's the result of trust, or trust is the result of honesty when you learn that the other person tells you the truth. There's independence. You are not tied to someone. They're not controlling you. Because of that, then there's also respect. Equality is a great element in a healthy relationship. Kindness is another element that is very important. How you learn to be kind with one another, to respect, to have equal relationships, to be kind with the other person. To have fun together is very important, very, very important. Have healthy conflict. One of the things I tell families is you need to learn to fight, but not just with each other, but fight for your marriage and your relationship so you have better marriage and better relationship and better health, family lives. And take responsibility for the things that happen in your marriage relationship. As I mentioned earlier, this happens when you are intentional. So what I like to do is then encourage you to think about these things that have been shared and think about where you are in your relationship. And then, and I'm talking about your relationship with your spouse, if you're married, with your relationship with your boyfriend or girlfriend, and with your friends, a relationship with your children, the relationships that are in your life. And think about how you can make them healthier, help them grow where they are, and become better. Best way to do this is to have open, clear, and honest conversations with each other. If you are a family, if you're a husband, wife sitting together listening to this, I want to encourage you to take time and think about ways how you can make your family and your relationship with each other, take it to a next level, to be better. So then, as you discuss this, you set goals, you set plans, you figure out how you're going to do it, and then you work at it so you can have your marriage, your family going to a next level when it comes to relationships. Be intentional in what you do, develop a plan, have a vision, so then you can have the family you always dream on having. So, Pastor Macena, it's just the beginning. But I want to leave this as an enticing to those that are listening, so they think about the relationships they have and then become intentional on how they're going to develop it and take it to a next level with each other.
Thank you so much, Pastor Eli. That it is enticing, and it's good to stop and think about these things and just go back, even if you've heard it before, just having that refresher and just getting having a time to bring you back to start thinking about it again. And because maybe we worked on an area and then life got busy and we need to just keep going back to this. and keep reviewing over and over, and then saying, okay, what's our next step? Okay, what's our next step? Because we can always be growing and developing our relationships. One of the main question that came through to my mind as I was listening to you was, what if only one partner in the relationship is seeing the dysfunctionality and saying, wow, we need to do something. I want to work on this, but the other partner is just not so involved. What advice would you give those in that situation?
Well, very often, very often what happens is that we don't have these honest conversations about what's going on in our relationships. And so I will encourage you, someone that tells me or that asks that question to me will be, have you had a heart-to-heart conversation with your partner, with your spouse, husband or wife? Have you had that conversation where you tell this person how you're truly feeling? Now, one of the challenges that we have with these conversations is that we often come and we say, listen, you are mean to me, you are treating me badly, you are doing this, you are doing that, and it's you. The most effective way to have these conversations is when you have a conversation where you actually share the feelings and the experiences that you are having as a result of the relationship. So don't start with an accusatory tone, but actually come to say, look, I am feeling sad. I'm feeling like we're not moving forward, and I openly will love. I truly would love to have a better relationship. How can we do this? And then have this open, hard conversation where you can share with each other, and then hopefully encourage each other to do something about it. Let's don't be satisfied with the way that with the place where our relationship is.
Uh, Pastor Eli, you mentioned from the beginning, and you mentioned a couple of times about having a vision for your family. You know, what do you want from your family? What the steps, what the planning, what the goals do you want for your family? Because sometimes, you know, we just get married and then, well, let's see what's going to happen. You know, maybe this might work out, you know, maybe not. So how can we, and that's our whole topic today, is about being intentional, you know. But when it comes to the vision for our families, what would be the steps that, you know, the family can say, okay, let's give a timeout now. Let's stop the way we do family here, because seems like we're not working, or it seems like we have some conflict. So how can we have a pause, and what would be the steps to build or to create or to develop a vision for the family?
Excellent question. And very often, so we plan our wedding, and sometimes we plan the honeymoon, and then that's it. You know, no more planning.
Yeah.
And that's why I always felt that God led me to this series, because, you know, how do we get to a better marriage? How do we get to a better relationship? So I've asked this question when I'm teaching, especially when I get to the section in parenting. I ask the parents, I said, you know, all right, how many of you will love for your child to be a doctor, to be an engineer? You know, raise your hand. To be the president of the United States, you know, to be an astronaut, you know. And so these big ideas, you know, these big professions. And people raise their hand, and so on and so forth. And so after I asked a few questions, and I asked them to put their hands down, I said, all right, now, how many of you are doing something about it? And I tell you, most of the time, no one raises their hand. Sometimes one or two are raising their hands. So that's exactly what I'm talking about. So the idea then is that as a couple, you sit together and you say, all right, where is our marriage today? How are we doing as a married couple? How are we doing as a family? Well, you know, we don't spend time together. We don't have money to do anything. And you start making a list of 2 or 3 things that where you feel that you're falling short, that is not the ideal, it's not the marriage of your dream, the family of your dream. And so So then once you identify a couple of areas, and I will say don't make a list that is too long because that might be discouraging, but think about 2 or 3 things that you can focus on so you can have a better marriage, a better relationship with your children. And so as you're thinking about that, and by the way, I will encourage you to do this with prayer. You know, get with your spouse, your husband, your wife, pray about it and say, Lord, help us be a better family. And then you talk about it and figure out ways to improve. You pick one thing. So let's say as a family, we're not spending enough time together. How are we going to fix this? Well, let's focus on that one. And you think of ways of doing it. You brainstorm about things you can do. Then you select a couple of things from that list and you try to implement them. Hey, even if those things don't work out, you're going to be in a better place because now you're doing something about having a better family, a better marriage, a better, whatever you want to apply it to in your relationship. And so that's one of the ways to do this. You have to sit down, think about it, talk about it, and then do something.
I like that. I was busy taking notes. um, so when I want to back up, I'm going to be jumping all over here today. You mentioned loyalty. Can you tell us, what does loyalty look like when you talk about families, when you talk about marriage, or when you talk about children, and when you talk about young children versus older children, etc.? What does loyalty look like? Can you tell us a little more about that concept?
I am so glad you asked that question. Yes, it's one of the areas. And by the way, again, I want to encourage you to look for that One Love website. It has great videos that shows, it gives instruction about many of these areas. But I'm going to tell you something. Even before I was married, I remember seeing kids in relationships, they're siblings. And I would see kids that did not get along. In fact, they will hate each other. Now, we're not here in a public setting where people can raise their hands. But, if I said, how many of you don't get along with your siblings? I'm sure that many people raise their hands. I saw that and I always thought, my kids are not going to be like that. They're going to love each other. Now, can you force love? And the answer is no, you cannot force love. But you can teach your kids to love each other and relate better to each other. I've seen parents where they're standing talking to other adults and the kids are pulling the hair out of each other. They're poking their eyes and having this horrible fight. And the parents is like, nothing is happening. And so when my kids started to grow up, and I shouldn't be saying because it really was a teamwork. My wife and I worked on this together. And as my kids started to get older, of course, they started to disagree. And so one thing that we were very intentional on doing was helping them get along, helping them resolve conflict, and always do it with a Christ-like attitude. I remember one time I can't remember which one it was, but one of them called the other the S word. You say, what is the S word? Well, one of them called the other stupid. And I pull them outside. I say, guys, I want you to know there's a rule in this house. I don't want you to break it. And that is that you never use put downs on your siblings, on your brother, on your sister. You always are going to, if you can't say something nice, then you're just going to stay quiet. But you're not going to say stupid or other words that will be a put down to your sibling. And they grew up with that. And it has made a tremendous difference in the relationship with each other. So yes, that's where loyalty comes in, because you teach your children, you teach yourself, your spouse, that family is number one, and that you need to care for each other, love for each other, and be there for each other. And that only happens, again, as you make decisions that you are going to have that as part of your family life.
May I add something to that real quick?
Yes, please.
I got this piece of advice from my aunt, and I have to admit it worked beautifully. And when you talk about that loyalty with the siblings, I asked her because I watched my cousins. I arrived in their house when I was a teenager, and I watched my cousins. I was like, man, they never fight. My siblings fought all the time. There were holes in the walls, there were black eyes, there were broken bones.
Yes.
It was knockdown drag out in my home, and in her home, the two sisters got along so beautifully. And I asked her after I got older, I was like, "What did you do? What was the secret?" And she's like, I don't know. I don't know that there is a secret. She said, I kept them close to me. And anytime I heard that first hint of discord between them, I immediately jumped in and said, oh, it sounds like we're not agreeing. How can we solve this problem?
Wow.
And she taught them at a very young age, rather than having these knockdown dragouts, to use their words and to solve those problems by keeping them close. And I actually did that with my own children, and it works beautifully. It is wonderful how well you can, as a parent, intervene and help them address the discords that do naturally happen when you live with each other and you've been playing with the same kid for 2 hours and you're all tired and ready to change the activity, so let's fight over it. But no, jump in as the adult and support that transition. And
So now think about this. You not only are training your children to get along with each other and do well, you're training them for life.
yes,
Because conflict is natural in life. You're going to have conflict at the supermarket. Someone cuts the line in front of you. And so how do you deal with those things? Well, you get that training at home.
yeah,
And only happens when the parents are intentional. And your aunt, even though she was not intentional, she was intentional. I mean, she
yeah.
did not go out to say, okay, this is how I'm going to do it, but she did it.
She knew what she needed to do and naturally implemented it.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's great. Pastor Eli, one of your slides, you show the health 10 signs of a healthy relationships and 10 signs of unhealthy relationships. And one of the things that was mentioned on that slide was the comfortable pace. There you go, that slide there,
Right.
the comfortable pace. Could you describe a little bit more about what that means? Is out of, because it's easy to be out of sync sometimes. One pace, because naturally two people, they have a different ways of seeing things, different ways of the way they have been raised, from their homes, how they see their parents. So how they can have a harmony in the pace that they do their lives together.
Great question. Yes, and that's very important. See, in relationships, when someone in a relationship demands the partner, the other person, the children, to keep up with them at a forced pace, then the relationship is in trouble. Is not good. In this list, it refers to the boyfriend that is pressuring his girlfriend to do something that she shouldn't be doing with him. And very early in the relationship is the person that says, well, if you really love me, you should be doing this. When the person is not ready or comfortable in a level in the relationship where they can do that more comfortably. But yet the person demands this. So this is a sign of something. And that's why, in the opposite list, it says, is listed there. Because in a loving, caring relationship, you're not going to pressure the other person in the relationship to do things at a pace that is uncomfortable. It makes us think that, and you think about any of our relationships with your children, with your spouse, with your parents, we always have to be considerate of the other person. Love does not force anyone. We learned this from God. God loves us. He came to save the entire planet, every living soul, but he offers that to us. He doesn't force it on us. he says, all who believe may have eternal life through Christ Jesus. But he doesn't say, all right, you guys, everybody's going to heaven. I don't care what you have to say. No, he doesn't say
Mhm.
that. He gives us the choice. He leaves, and then he lets us grow in a relationship with them at the pace that we're comfortable with. That's our loving God. And so that's how we should be relating to our loved ones in a relationship, and the relationship that we're sharing with them in a pace that they feel comfortable. So,
Great.
you're patient with your children, you're patient with your spouse, and because you love them, you wait on them. Is
Mhm.
that answer your
Great.
question? Yeah.
Yes, yes. Thank you, thank you. Just following up on that one about the list that I know the two lists that you show us. One of the aspects in relationship that the list that you mentioned here as well is the independence part. You know, uh, in a marriage relationship, what is looks like that independence? So yeah, but I mean, this list here could be talk about the another thing that I want to ask about this list about health conflict. Because there is the conflict and health conflict. But I will ask only those two things here. Go a little bit more about the independence, and also health conflict, what that looks like, because we are going to have conflict, but how does it look like a healthy conflict in a marriage?
All right. So let me start with the independence, right? so
Uh-huh.
so the the independence part of this list, it's about the ability that we have to spend time together, but also spend time apart. Is the controlling husband, controlling wife that always wants to know what's going on in the other person's life and is controlling,
Mm,
and it's so there's no independence. Now this is very interesting because this is one of those things that we usually bring into our relationship from our homes of origin, from the place where we grew up. So if you grew up in a family where mom and dad always were checking on you and everybody knew where you were and everybody knew what you were doing and you are very, very tight knit together, it's more likely that you're going to have that as you go into your relationships. So you will be calling, if you're dating, you'll be calling your girlfriend, your boyfriend, and where are you and what are you doing? And I want you here with me. And so there's that control, that possession of the person. Now, you could also have grown in a place where actually there is total independence in the sense that nobody cares where you are. Yeah, I love you, but yeah, you can spend a week and I don't care what's happening. Both both extremes are negative,
Unhealthy. Mhm.
unhealthy. If you love someone, you don't want to control them, but you also want to know what's going on in their lives. So there, the
Mhm.
independence speaks of the ability of the couple and the family to be able to let the members in their relationship to do their own thing, but also come together. There's a balance there.
Mhm.
So you're not always together, but you're not always independently doing their own things. So you come together, you go apart, you come together, and there is no control on that. And that's where, so that's the healthy way is you can be apart from each other and enjoy yourself, and then you can come together and enjoy yourself, and there is no demanding that will be one way or the other. So that's the
Mhm.
independence
Independence.
aspect, and so it's very important in relationships to have that. Um, and so, what is healthy conflict like? There was a pastor told me this story. He said that had a member that this is many years back, member that came to him and said, "Pastor, my husband hit me today." Well, you guys can't imagine that a pastor is supposed to report that. So he says to her, "Oh, sister, I have to call the police about this." She said, "No, no, don't call the police, please. What I want you to help me know what to do, and but don't call the police. I don't want him in jail." Well, they have this conversation back and forth. He says, "Well, this is what we're gonna do. Wednesday, come to church, and then after church, You're going to do everything I tell you. So anyway, she comes to church. After church service, he takes her to a karate studio. She goes through training for a few weeks. One day she's having this conversation with her husband. It gets hot and he raises his hand. And as he raises his hand to hit her, she grabs him, throws him over the shoulder, puts him on the floor, and said, "Never touch me again." That's not what I'm talking about. Learning to fight in your family is not what I'm talking about. So what is the idea? The idea is that you learn to deal with difficulties in a healthy way. That you learn that, no one is perfect. So he's going to have problems. She's going to have problems. The kids are going to have problems. But the question is, how do you deal with the problems when they come up? And I wish I had more time to go over the many possibilities there. But the bottom line is this. When you have conflict, work on fixing the problem. Paulo, how many times has a person that probably sharing the conflict that he or she's having with her spouse or his spouse said to you, well, if she really knew how I feel, she will do something about it. Or if he really knew that this and that, then he will do things differently. Well, if he doesn't know, then tell him. If she has no idea, well, let her know what's going on. But what we do in our relationships is that we stay quiet, we don't say things, and either we blow up at the end, becomes to a point where you blow up, or you continuously to be a martyr, where you're always suffering because your husband never brought you flowers, but of course you never told him to bring you flowers. And so speak up. And when there's a disagreement, then talk about it and figure ways to solve those issues. So then you can fight for your marriage and not just in your marriage. I wish I had more time, but let me give you a couple of things to have conversations that are positive to solve issues. The first thing you do is you make an appointment with your spouse. Don't just bring it up when, a wife, don't bring it up Sunday afternoon when he's watching the football game. That's the worst time to do that. Or husband, don't go talk to her when she's on the phone talking to her mom. You have to make an appointment and say, hey, I want to talk to you about something. Can we make some time tomorrow, say 8 to 9, and I just want to talk about something that's important. Well, so you set the time apart. The next thing you do is when you come to talk to your spouse, and by the way, you can do this with your children, with your parents, to any relationship that you have where you're having conflict. So the next step is that when you get together, you present one issue that you're going to talk about. And that's another problem. Sometimes we bring 5, 10, 20 things that we want to fix. That's not going to work. So bring one thing, talk about it, figure out a way how you're both contributing to the problem and how you both can help solve the problem. And don't do it accusatory, but do it constructively. We have an issue. How are we going to fix it? Make a list, figure out a couple of ways of working on it, and then try it. And if it doesn't work, then figure out a couple of other ways. But don't give up. Fight for your marriage and try to make a difference so it's better.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. So I wanted to go back, Pastor Eli, where we were talking briefly about our families of origin. I think, just leaving that one quote, talking about how we don't even know what a healthy family looks like. It really is a reality that the majority of us come from, dysfunctional, unhealthy families. And so I'm just wondering for the viewers that are watching that maybe feel like, okay, we can't do counseling. Either a spouse won't do counseling with me, or we literally cannot afford to do counseling. What are some other resources that we could use? Are there books? Are there other places where we can get that support to help address family of origin issues that may be affecting us in our marriages and our families?
Right. Well, let me start with the family of origin part. That's an interesting one. A couple was having problems. They called me to come visit with them. It was late in the afternoon when I got there. It was already dark, so I didn't pay attention to the outside of the house. I just went, knocked on the door, came in. We started having the conversation. Their big fight was about one issue, and this was the issue. He grew up in a home where his mother was the one that did the lawn care, took care of cutting the grass and the flowers and everything. And so that's where he grew up. She grew up in a home where her father was responsible for that. So they get married, and then they're looking at each other, wondering, when is my husband, when is my wife going to go out and fix and take care of the lawn? That was their big fight. When I left the house, then I look around, and sure enough, the grass was really tall, and it was a mess outside. Why? Because the fight was because they both had grown up with that expectation. When they got to the marriage, that's what they were expecting. So that's what happens. It can be little things, it can be big things, but we bring these things that we grew up with into our marriage, and there are, again, expectations that we have. So how do you work with that? Well, don't fight about it. Talk about it and figure out ways how you're going to solve those issues. Now, Debbie, you said something else, and I forgot what the other part of your question was. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, no problem. I was just wondering, where else can
Oh, yes.
families get support?
Resources. Yes, resources. Um, well, I will encourage you now, number one, and I think this is a great way to start looking into how to improve your marriage, is find out about marriage enrichment events in the area. Um, Churches do this. There are many places where you can find events, and many companies like Family. Oh, what is the name of the? There are many sources of places that do ministry and do events where they do marriage enrichment events. So do your best to take your spouse to one of these events, because that usually is a great way to get started into a better relationship, started into better marriage, because you go to these things, you hear about how things can be improved, and it is a tremendous help. If your husband, if your wife, if you're both readers, there are many great books out there. And I tell folks, professionals don't like this, but I am a pastor counselor, so I do it differently. I say, go find this book, read it, and you're going to laugh together, but you're going to start seeing things in a different way. And that is, men are from Mars and women are from Venus. It's a funny book about relationships. But I have, interestingly enough, I've done that with many couples, and they come and they're just laughing their head off about all the differences that they're seeing, that they're actually experiencing, but they never knew how, that there was natural, number one, and then they never knew how to work with these things. So find good books that will help you learn how to have a better relationship with your spouse. And then talk to, if you are part of a church, talk to your pastor. Not all pastors are good at advising couples, but some of them are, and they can also tell you about resources. Focus on the family. Focus on the Family has great information in the website. And one of the things they have is they have a place where you can actually find people in your area that can help you grow in your relationship. And they are people that have been screened by them. And so they're good advisors, good counselors that can help you with your relationships. And then another way of doing it is visit a family that you admire, because you always see them that they get along, they love each other. And so make an appointment, come visit with them and say, how is it that you guys seem to have a great relationship? How do you get there, and what's happening, and how can we have what you have? Those are things that will help you in your journey to a better relationship with your spouse. That's kind
Great.
of a small way of getting started.
Good. Pastor Eli, our time is up, but I have to ask you a last question before we end our Tuesday topics tonight. You mentioned about praying, about putting God in the relationship. And, in a simple way that sometimes I see a marriage relationship has to do a lot of this lack of spirituality inside of the couple, in the relationship. Uh, I'm gonna ask a question just to be redundant here, but how important it is that a couple they pray together, they have the spiritual life in the family, they really intentionally as well they put God in the midst of their relationship.
It is so important that what I've discovered as I have counseled many couples is this. It sounds simplistic, but it's the truth and it's the reality. When couples follow the spiritual advice I give them, they start to have success and to move forward and improve in their relationship. When couples don't do that, they don't move forward. They don't progress in their relationship. They don't get better. Because one of the biggest things that we struggle with in relationships is with our ego, is with our flesh, is the idea that I always want to have my way. Is the person that says, "Hey, I'm leaving this marriage because she doesn't make me happy, because he doesn't make me happy. It's all about me." But when you come to Christ and you humbly surrender yourself, then you stop thinking only about yourself and you start thinking about others. Families that have a relationship with God have more of a chance to succeed and do better in their relationship than couples that do not do that. And it's interesting, but it starts very little. And what I do, and I've seen it and I've experienced myself, is that it can start with a simple practice. And that is start praying together before you go to sleep. I don't care if it is just a short prayer. It could be standing because one is going to stay doing some work and the other one is going to go to bed, but have that prayer. And then as the days go by, that prayer starts to be more significant. And then conversations start to happen. And then you start spending more time with each other and with God. But prayer and seeking God and having a relationship with Him, to me, is the most important thing that anyone in a relationship can do, because that's the only way you start seeing others with God's eyes and not with your own selfish eyes. It makes a tremendous, tremendous difference in every relationship. So the
Amen.
Lord said, seek first the kingdom of God.
Yeah.
I think that can be applied to any relationship you have and to any situation in life. We put God first, and God blesses us for it.
Amen. Amen.
Amen.
Wow, my friend, Pastor Eli, once again, thank you for joining us tonight. This important topic that you brought to us, have our families and have be intentional in everything we do. Not take by chance, but be intentional in building up our family and have our devotional homes and praying together. And thank you for all the information you gave to us, all these tips. And may also God bless your life, bless your ministry, bless your kids, bless your marriage. In everything you do, we pray for your life as well. So for those who are watching us on Facebook and Zoom here, thank you for joining us once again on Tuesday Topics. And see you next week. Every Tuesday we come together, have a different topic here. And next week, Pastor Jerry Lutz is going to be with us, sharing a very important topic as well. And I hope to see you next week. Good night, everyone. Pastor Eli, once again, thank you for your help. Pastor Debbie, thank you once again for joining us. And JF, thank you for being with us and helping us to run Tuesday Topics.